Good morning and welcome to Liverpool Transfer Daily here on the Blood Red channel. I'm Guy Clarke. Alongside me, Liverpool.com's James Martin, as we bring you the latest in the Liverpool rumour mill. We want your comments and questions to get involved in the chat box through the course of the show. We will try to get through them as we go through. But James, in terms of today, we've got Jude Bellingham and Carney Chukwuemeka to talk about. First up, Jude Bellingham, and reports saying that Liverpool might look to try and strike a deal within weeks to secure Bellingham, maybe for the January window, if not for perhaps the summer.
Yeah, from Football Insider, I think it's an interesting one. I don't think anyone would be surprised if conversations had taken place, whether that's ahead of next summer, a kind of informal agreement, or whether it's more of a navigator situation. But yeah, I think Liverpool, well, they're not naive. They know there's going to be a major race for his signature next summer. So if they can forestall that and jump to the front of the queue by negotiating in advance, I think it makes a lot of sense. I can't see a January move. Obviously, it would be great from a Liverpool perspective. They saw with Luis Diaz last year how January can have a lot of benefits. You know, typically you'd associate FSG with steering clear of the January market, but that kind of injection of a new, fresh talent really did sort of reinvigorate the quadruple charge. Diaz was man of the match in one cup final, could easily have been man of the match in both of them. He was definitely a key part of that push late in the season, and Bellingham, I'm sure, would have a similarly transformative effect, especially coming in almost at the start of part two of the season this time around because of the Winter World Cup, of course. So it'd be almost like a fresh start. Adding Bellingham in for that would be lovely. I can't see Dortmund agreeing to it. That if they struck a deal with us this summer for something in advance, they'd really be doing us a favour. I mean, obviously Liverpool would be paying a premium to reflect that, as they did with Keita, but I can't see Dortmund deciding to let him go 6 months early when it's barely even in their best interest to agree a deal now, because next summer they'll be hoping for a bidding war, and they'll probably get it.
Yeah, they'll want the open auction. Liverpool certainly won't want that. And as you say, we'll want to try and tie something up. There is no release clause at play here as well. So again, Dortmund hold the cards. I'm a bit different to you in terms of I think the World Cup might play a factor. It seems so often that players go into major tournaments with their national sides and then off the back of that want to sort their futures out one way or another. And I think how the World Cup is positioned, the Champions League group phase is going to be done before that. If Dortmund were to go out in the group stage, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility, Bellingham may well then push for a move in the January market. Equally, even if Dortmund do get through, I don't know what the realistic possibility for them is of advancing through into the latter stages of the tournament. And if they go, actually, so long as we get through to that knockout phase, we're happy to take the money that we've got there. That is our season. Our model is based off ensuring Champions League qualification and getting through the group stage each season. So I'm interested to see what impact the World Cup could have on it. But as you say, I think it would be a difficult one. But as we've seen with Haaland, as we saw even with Mbappe, Liverpool have interest in these world-class talents and players with high ceilings to push on. Equally, the crucial thing for Liverpool is to get there before the rest, as they did with Diaz, because once the queue begins to form, Liverpool aren't kind of the keenest to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried in terms of the transfer fee when it comes to a big scrap between clubs. I think FSG would pay it for someone who's very clearly going to be world class for a long time. That's the benefit of having someone who's only 19 and already at these levels. I suppose what you'd also say with the age is, if Dortmund do go out in the group stages, it's not like he doesn't have time on his side. He probably won't think, I need to leave. I couldn't necessarily see him pushing early just because of that. But you never know. But yeah, what worries me if it does get into a big scrap for his signature is the wages. And I think that's another key reason why it would make sense for Liverpool to be trying to negotiate something ahead of time, just because another good season, the amount he can demand will just go up and up and up. And whether he just decides to choose the best footballing project or whether he goes for who's paying the most, it's hard to judge footballers who do that, given that it is their careers. So it's always going to be a big decision to turn down a bigger offer for a smaller one, whatever the context. And, FSG, they've shown that they will go big. They've done it with Salah, but, Salah has proved himself at Liverpool for a prolonged period of time. I don't think they'd go even particularly close to what they're paying Salah to get Bellingham in. So if the wage demands go too sky high, I can't see it. So again, another reason to get negotiating now if at all possible.
Yeah, we saw it with Tchouameni, didn't we? In the summer, he went to Real Madrid. Of course, they are European champions, but I don't think the outcome of the Champions League final would have swayed his mind. I think the side, as you say, paying the bigger wages was probably who he decided to go to. There. Morning to everyone who is joining us, or afternoon as it is in India. Plenty of you involved in the chat box this morning, and we got one. Sign him now. I think that is certainly a case. Mr. Crazy saying he might be a bit pricey if Liverpool are to go for Jude Bellingham, and Elstonio saying looking forward to us telling him that Bellingham has signed. Not quite the case, but Liverpool hoping that they can look to try and do a deal. Elstonio also in on saying Liverpool should have signed the Villa player who's just agreed to go to Chelsea. That's Carney Chukwuemeka. And as it would happen, James, we're going to talk all about him. England Youth International, won the under-19 Euros during the summer, was captain of that side and one of the star players within the tournament. In fact, I think he was named player of the tournament. He's had a frozen out spell during pre-season at Aston Villa where he wasn't agreeing a new contract. Chelsea have now decided to pay him and pay for him, and by the sounds of it, he does want quite high wages for a player yet to really prove himself in the Premier League. What's your take on this? Do you think Liverpool have missed one here, or do you think they've calculated this one right?
I think it's so hard to judge with young players, isn't it? Because if he goes on to fulfil his potential, then you'll say even the high wages he's demanding were a bargain, and Chelsea were the ones shrewd enough to go for it. But equally, we've seen probably more young players than not have this kind of hype around them, have the clear talent, and then not come good on it, particularly when they move to a top club and spaces in the first team are so hard to come by. I mean, you could easily see him kicking about at Chelsea for a while, getting a few loans, and then they'll probably sell him on for a profit. But that's easier to see than him actually ever becoming a long-term Chelsea player. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, and he'll be hoping he can prove that perception wrong. But yeah, he does seem like a good talent. And obviously, the fee's not going to be too bad with the contract situation, but it does seem almost kind of indicative of Chelsea's whole approach this window, which has been really quite chaotic. It's been very opportunist, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there doesn't seem to be any particular plan about the kind of player they want to come in. They're just having a look around and saying, oh, he's available, he looks like he might be decent, let's go for him. And so unless Liverpool thought that Chukwuemeka had a clear place in the long-term plan, then I don't think they were ever going to move for him. You could argue that maybe he does have that kind of place. There's a refresh going on. The age profile is slowly being brought down. But again, with all of the talk we're saying earlier about Bellingham, you're not gonna get in someone who's of a similar age bracket if you're planning on getting in a world-class talent later on.
But is the case in point with Chukwuemeka maybe actually highlighted with Bellingham there, where we say that maybe this summer was the year that Liverpool could get Bellingham before others came into the market, but Dortmund aren't in a position where they want to sell because they've obviously lost Erling Haaland this summer and don't want to completely rip their squad apart. Yet you could argue Liverpool had the opportunity to get Bellingham before he went to Dortmund, which I suppose is the phase of his career that Chukwuemeka is in now.
Yeah, but then would Bellingham have become what he has become if he made that sort of move when he went to Dortmund? I don't think he would, because that's just the football food chain, really. Dortmund have this almost, well, not unique role, but they have a very specific role in football, which is that they have this really convincing pitch to young players. We will give you game time and we will let you go after a couple of years of service to us. And it works well for them. They get a lot of money from it. They get, decent performances because all of these players they're signing are very good. And then, a few years down the line, that's when they go to the big clubs who will have to pay more, but they'll be getting much more of a guaranteed end product. And instead of just buying a raw talent, they're getting someone who's had some experience in a top league, normally in the Champions League as well. I think that's just the way it goes. I don't think it's really realistic to look at it and say, oh, we could have got Bellingham early. And I don't think it's similar with Chukwuemeka. I mean, obviously, if he's going to Chelsea, it's very unlikely Liverpool will ever be getting him. But that's the risk they have to take. And is that a bigger or smaller risk than signing him now? Clearly, FSG have weighed it up and said the risk of signing him is bigger than the risk of not signing him, which I would tend to agree with.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Good point and well made. Before we get on to the comments and questions in the chat box, another line on Chelsea. The Daily Mail reporting today that they're looking to try and snap up Michael Edwards, of course, who's left Liverpool after a decade of service. He's going for a little sabbatical, but as we know with Jurgen Klopp, these don't always last as long as first intended, and Chelsea seem to be keen to get hold of him.
Yeah, well, rightly so. Like I was saying earlier about their window, it's been a bit mad. I mean, not necessarily bad players coming in. Sterling, I think, was a good addition. Koulibaly, not bad, although 31, maybe they'd have ideally gone a bit younger. But yeah, just other transfers they're being linked with it, just whoever seems to be available. We've mentioned Chukwuemeka, Frankie de Jong now, apparently. They thought, oh, yeah, might go for him. Why not? Cucurella, which is really quite odd. I mean, I guess they're signing him or trying to sign him as a left centre-back, but if you're that desperate for a left centre back, don't you sign a left centre back rather than a left wing back who can sort of play there? Especially when you already have 3 left wing backs at the club, in Alonso and Emerson and Chilwell. So yeah, I think that they're in pretty dire need of an actual sporting director rather than Todd Boehly just having fun, giving it a go after taking the club over. And yeah, Michael Edwards is one of the best in the business.
Yeah, Todd Boehly playing Football Manager in real life. It is interesting to watch how it is playing out, but we will have to wait and see how it is. D. Pierce has got in touch. Says, do we think it's realistic to expect a deal plus a loan back? That on Jude Bellingham. Personally, think that one would be quite difficult for Liverpool to do. But as the point is made by Reluctant Socialist, if we don't sign Bellingham this summer, it's not going to happen. With the 4th highest earning club in the world, yet there are 10 to 15 clubs willing to spend more than what they earn. That is the Liverpool model. That's how they go about things. And as I say, James, the ball very much in Dortmund's court here, and it's going to be a true test of Julian Ward's negotiation skill if he is able to do a Naby Keita style deal, whether it's a loan back or whether it's a case of the deal doesn't actually activate until next summer.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to agree. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, I think if it was struck, it'd probably be more likely to see something like the Keita one, where it's not technically a loan, but yeah, they're materially the same thing. And if he pulls it off, it'll obviously be a masterstroke. And I do tend to agree with the second comment that it may be now or never. But I still think we'd go for him next summer if we couldn't get something sorted now. But as we were talking about with the wage race, maybe Liverpool won't be winning that if it comes down to it. But yeah, it's a test of his skill and also a test of what FSG are willing to spend now, because there would be a premium on top of what is already going to be a very high fee for Bellingham. So yeah, it would be an expensive one to get done and certainly a complicated one.
Ross has got a canny idea here. All we need is for another big team to show interest in Bellingham and we'll snap him up like we did with Diaz. Be interesting to see if another side did make a move, but I suppose it probably is highly unlikely that Dortmund are going to want to lose both Haaland and Bellingham in one season. As Steve gets involved in the chat box and says, Leonard here says, any news on Barella? Well, he's another midfield player who has been linked with Chelsea, and as Christopher outlines, the Echo reporting that Chelsea have started to show an interest in him. That might be one of those, James, where another side steps up, i.e. Chelsea. They've been beaten to a number of targets this year. It'd be funny if Liverpool added their name to the list.
It would be funny. I can't see it, but I do like Barella a lot. He's another one who pops up in terms of when you're looking at Bellingham and players with similar-ish profiles. His name comes up. He's potentially slightly more in the attack-minded bracket, but they're both the kind of do a bit of everything, box-to-box roles. They've both proven their talent already on top stages. Barella's a little bit further along in his development, which has pros and cons. You get slightly less time out of him at the top level on one side of things, but equally maybe that extra bit of experience tells. I think you probably get him a bit cheaper than Bellingham, again purely because he's not such a precocious talent in terms of where he is in his development. He's coming into his prime rather than having the world at his feet and a decade plus of potentially world-class football ahead of him. But yeah, I think Diaz was a priority target. We were always going to go for him in the summer, and so when Spurs went for him in January, that triggered it. Whereas if Barella is just someone on the list of potentials, which I think is probably his likely status within the club at the moment, I think if another club went for him, we'd probably be inclined to let that play out. I'd be surprised if we tried to hijack it, but it would be funny, and it's possible.
Right, the chat box is alive this morning. I think it's because we're talking about Jude Bellingham and everyone gets very, very excited. But last one before we go, GR says, what if we did a swap? Jude for Naby. Well, Naby's into the final 12 months of his contract. I don't think it'd be a straight swap, would it? He would have to be included in a deal for it. I mean, yes, Borussia Dortmund would be losing Haaland and Bellingham at the same time, but equally, they would be getting a midfielder who has performed expertly well in the Bundesliga. So is it one to consider? He's into the final 12 months of his contract. We understand the club are trying to negotiate an extension to Naby Keita's deal, but would it be worth sacrificing Naby Keita to bring in Jude Bellingham?
Yeah, I think so. I do actually think it would be a good deal for all parties. How much of a discount he would get us remains to be seen. But yeah, like you say, he's proven in the Bundesliga. He had his best season with Liverpool, I would say, last season. Certainly in terms of actual minutes getting him on the pitch, it was the most he'd ever played, just about surpassing his first season, which is promising. Again, I mean, I mentioned with Barella that he's one who crops up on these sort of statistical comparison websites. Keita is always right up there. It's he has that kind of all action side to him. It's him and Bellingham are similar players, and like you say, with that Bundesliga advantage for Keita, I do think it will work quite well for everyone. Liverpool would only consider it if Dortmund put a reasonable price on Keita's head. If they're saying, okay, you can have 5 million off Bellingham if you give us Keita, then at that point you probably say, well, it's not worth it. But yeah, I think if everyone was reasonable and sat down and discussed that option, I do think there's something there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how things do play out. Well, that's it from us today on the Liverpool Transfer Daily here on Blood Red. If you're new to the show, make sure you come and join us 9:30 every weekday morning, Monday to Friday. That's UK time, 9:30 a.m. Do drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. But from myself, Guy Clarke and James Martin, until next time here on Blood Red, it's bye for now.